that. All right, well, hello everybody, welcome. My name is Brooke Briosco. I am co-PTO president with Sarah Schiavone. And we are just so thrilled for our principal chat today. We have a wonderful conversation all set up with Principal Eric Foreman and Sherry Shapiro, who is the school psychologist. Yes, thumbs up, wonderful. Okay, so it's gonna be a great conversation. First, there's a couple of just some updates that the PTO wants to go ahead and share with everybody. So first of all, just thank you for coming to this meeting here today. We really want to make sure we're keeping everybody feel connected to Woodbury, to the staff at Woodbury, to their students' educational experiences. So thank you so much for being here today. Of course, you probably got a text message or an email. We also have our e-news that are on Sundays, our monthly e-blast. So make sure you're looking for all those different ways of communication. And if you're on social media, the Woodbury Facebook page is a really great resource of information. So we want to give a financial report update. We had the We Love Woodbury fundraiser, which was a huge success. Thank you so much for donating and spending time and energy with the staff, and to Lori and Susan, our wonderful volunteers who pulled that together. We also recently had our Chula fundraiser, which was a huge success. So thank you to Chris, our fundraiser, our volunteer who organized that, and for everybody who participated. And if you need to see the PTO budget, you can find that on the shakerpto.org website. Just look for the Woodbury page. And of course, our wonderful staff at Woodbury, we always want to make sure we're showing them appreciation. And we have every other month, we do snacks for them in the staff lounge. So if you're looking for that sign up genius to participate, you can find that in the e-news. I believe it's Monday, December 12th, and then what's 14th was that? So the 20, well, it's in the e-news. So go ahead and look for that information. And upcoming events. So PTO Council will be helping the city, school, and library plan the MLK event. So there's a lot of really great events happening. I want to make sure everybody knows that right now the library is currently organizing a writing contest for students 3rd through 8th grade. So that includes our Woodbury students. You can find some more information on that at the Shaker Library webpage. But it's a really great opportunity to engage our younger kids on the upcoming holiday. We are also excited to announce that Reverend Dr. Otis Moss Jr. will be a guest speaker on Thursday, January 12th. So look for more information on that. A facilitated conversation on Sunday, the 15th at the Stephanie Tubb Jones building. And then Monday, our 3rd annual donations drive, which has been a huge success for our nonprofit organizations, will be on that Monday. So that's all wonderful. And then of course, our next PTO meeting will be Tuesday, January 17th. So lots of great things. But now that that's all been said, thank you for that time. I am going to, I think, kick it over to you, Eric. Did I get everything on the agenda?
Yeah, that looks good to me.
Oh, I actually wanted to put it, I'm so sorry, a really quick plug for our PTO is a nonprofit organization, and we are always looking for helpers with our financial management. We're going to start recruiting for next year. So if you want to participate with us and don't mind helping us keep track of the dollars, please reach out to us at, I think, woodburyptopres@gmail.com. So, okay, now I'm all done, Eric. I'm going to go on mute now. It's all you.
All right. Thank you, Brooke. I appreciate that. I'm excited to have so many people here. The bulk of the time I do want to save for Ms. Shapiro, who is here with us, who again is Woodbury school psychologist. But I did want to just make note of a couple of things while I have some listening here. So The first is I hope everybody and schedules aligned for everybody to have the opportunity to attend a band or orchestra concert this past week. Students had in-school concerts last week and concerts for the community over the course of the past week. I think it's really exciting to say that I know everyone had that opportunity because all of our kids play instruments in 5th and 6th grade at Woodbury, which now having lived that for the last 4 to 5 months is a tremendous undertaking, but really such a key piece of the work that we do here at Woodbury, but also in Shaker Heights, and a tremendous asset. The concerts were wonderful, really incredible turnout. And so I had a student say to me today how much the first response was, I didn't love how many people were there because it was kind of made me nervous, but it was really awesome. And so the idea that like to see their community come out in such droves, I think is such a special treat for our kids. So thank you to everybody, and I'm looking forward to doing that again in the spring. The other piece, and this is just more an open call for feedback or ideas. We are really in the process right now of launching our transition activities and conversations with rising 4th graders and rising 4th grade families. And many of you have experienced, or all of you have experienced, that transition at least once with your children. You may have had older children, you've experienced it more than once, or you have younger children who will be experiencing that. And we are in the process of keeping some things, changing some things, and I am very open and desire some feedback on parents' experiences through that process over the last couple of years. So I ask sort of 2 things of the community. One is if you have ideas or things that went really well for your child, or things that you would suggest are added or changed, please do not hesitate to email me. I'm very interested in getting that, as well as in your communities and in your neighborhoods and streets and friends and other social circles. If you have families of rising 5th graders, current 4th graders who are asking questions about that process, please ensure people more information is to come. The first of that will be some tours in January, but additionally, some Woodbury staff will be making an appearance at the next K-4 PTO meetings. And so, but if you do get questions from neighbors or friends, please, let them know about that, but also encourage them to reach out directly to anyone, including myself here at Woodbury, and we can make sure that they have all the information that they need. And on that note, I want to introduce Jerry Shapiro, who has been a longtime member of the Woodbury and Shaker community, both as an employee and as a parent. And she is our school psychologist, which plays many roles in our community. And I will let her touch on those. Her purpose and drive today is a conversation that I've had with many parents over the course of the last few years of technology and our students and their growing brains, and the rise in social media and their growing brains, and frankly, our adult brains and social media, and all of the ways in which the world connects right now that our young people are navigating on a regular basis, and that us as parents and educators are navigating on a daily basis as it relates to our students' desire to engage in that space and our children's desire to engage in that space, and how to do that both safely, but also to have an understanding of, as parents, as we make the best choices we can make for our children, what the realities are of that. And I feel very much in the mix of this myself. I have a soon-to-be 10-year-old who asks me almost daily for a cell phone or device of some sort. And so I'm going to be learning along with all of you. I know both Ms. Shapiro and I would love to have this be a really collaborative conversation, one where people feel comfortable asking questions, but also sharing their experiences, and just building more opportunities like this for us to connect as a community of parents and of a community of adults who care about the young people in this community, and ways that we can continue to grow and learn together. And on that front, I introduce Sherry Shapiro, and Sherry, just let me know when you want to change slides, and I'm on Johnny on the spot.
Thank you. All set? Thank you.
All right, I'm hoping people can see that.
And I think if you click the arrow, I have one more, just an icon that will pop up. There you go.
Okay.
So, hi, everybody. It's my pleasure to be here. And as Eric said, I lived in the community for many, many years. I have two sons who went through the Shaker schools from kindergarten through 12th grade. I'm passionate about our schools, about our community, and certainly about children. So I'm thrilled to be here. If you don't mind jumping to the next slide, Eric, and to talk about just in general things to consider, because pressure on parents, gosh, it's really, really hard being a parent. And I think it's the hardest job that any of us will ever have, just trying to, as Eric said earlier, that word navigate. We're navigating lots of things. And in this current state of where we are in our world with technology, we do know that our children, the kids, crave contact with their friends. We're talking about this age group. I'm really focusing on the 10 to 12-year-olds. So I really focused when I was preparing for this presentation on the preteen years and looking forward beyond that. But we know that as kids grow and develop, they crave more and more contact with their friends, with their peers. And let's face it, social media has become an important way for them to interact. The downside, of course, is that it has the potential to become truly addictive and to get them into trouble and to honestly interfere with their self-esteem. So my goal with this presentation is to very much have it be interactive. So feel free to jump in. I will learn from you because you are in the midst of navigating this, and we are in the midst of navigating this within the school setting, and working together is how we help kids the most. So as far as the next slide. So again, traditionally what we're finding is, kids often start pushing for access to social media in late elementary, early middle school. I think it's late elementary. I don't think they wait till early middle school. Eric, you just mentioned your fourth grader is asking. And parents feel pressured to allow it because we've got that balance of we don't want our kids to feel left out. And there's also within the area of research, brain development, and just general development, delaying social media immersion really does help our children be more mature about, if they've got the ability to post, if they're able, with just normal development and maturation, they're more able to resist its addictive appeal. And that's, something that social media platforms work very hard for all of us, regardless of our age, is to pull us in more and more and more. And my focus also is less vulnerable to emotional harm. That's what I tend to worry the most about. We know that there are algorithms. That's no surprise to any of us. And of course, they're designed to maximize profits, not to benefit kids. They don't focus on the health of our children. So we need to focus on the health of our children. Next slide, if you don't mind, Eric. So in preparing for this presentation, I came upon this individual who I've been aware of a lot of resources, but this individual I really learned more about. His name is Max Stossel, and he's the founder and CEO of a group called Social Awakening. And it promotes the healthy use of social media, because the bottom line is, regardless of when parents decide to allow access to technology of any kind, is promoting the healthy use of it. And that's a lifelong skill. That's a skill that we want to carry into adulthood. He's talked to groups of parents, students, educators about the impact of technology on kids for at least a decade. And it's interesting, I just want to share a little bit about his background. He was a media strategist. So he has extensive background, not in education, not in psychology. He's not coming from the viewpoint of a parent. He's got extensive background in social media. He ran social for multinational brands, and he worked for a social media company. He actually designed notification structures, excuse me, to distract people so that they would spend more time on the platform. He is also an award-winning poet, filmmaker, speaker. He's the youth and education advisor for an organization called the Center for Humane Technology, which was something new for me. So he comes across in general as saying just 11-year-olds, many kids in our building are at this age, are just too young to have, computers pointed at their brains, often preying on their social image. There's so many change developmentally with hormones, with pre-adolescence, and to just hone in on their attention. So as far as the next slide, Eric, he endorses a parent movement, just in case any of you are interested. I thought it was interesting, called Wait Till 8th. And that advocates delaying exposure to social media until kids are in 8th grade. And from his vantage point, and we all have different perspectives, he feels that 8th grade is the minimum. And there's another resource, which many of you may be aware of, which is a wonderful, wonderful resource, Common Sense Media. And if you Google Common Sense Media, it'll come up. It's commonsensemedia.org. It's a wonderful resource, not only will tell you information about movies, about video games, about apps, about anything that is in the media. And it is a wonderful resource for parents just to kind of get a sense of, I found when my sons were younger, it was really hard to keep up with everything that was, being discussed and talked about. And that is a place where you can go and you can just get an objective sort of summary and recommendations, and then you can make, the best decision as it relates to you as a parent for your child or your children. And according to Common Sense Media, which is kind of striking, 42% of kids have a phone by age 10, and by age 12, it's 71%, and by age 14, it's 91%. So that's a lot of kids within this age group and beyond who have smartphones. Research does show that 10 to 14-year-old girls are hit the hardest by the impact of social media. So again, these are all things to keep in mind as, again, to use that word as we navigate this whole arena of technology. Next slide, please. So we have the age consideration, we have the recommendation of wait till 8th, but we also it's not just about the age, because for me as a school psychologist, we know, and for you as parents, we know that every child is different. I look back at the way in which both of my sons were so very different. And so things to consider are not just the age, but other things just that are independently relevant to each individual child. So when students are ready will depend on other things, for example, like their ability to read social cues, their impulse control, their vulnerability to criticism or rejection. If a preteen has a particularly hard time disengaging from stimulating things like video games, they might also have trouble, resisting what we call, the rabbit hole of social media. So it's not just about the age. Other things to consider, which we'll start on the next slide, would be how easily does your child, again, pick up on social cues? is he or she slow to catch on? If so, this deficit could be aggravated in texting and posting on social media. The other thing, again, there's more than just what I have on my slides, but just to hit some high points, how savvy is your child about technology? A lot of this is, as in many other areas, when we're, guiding our kids and making decisions about our kids, thinking about it, it also involves a lot of communication. Do they truly understand that, for example, even though it sounds really bizarre to think about our 5th graders or our 6th graders and college admissions, because that seems so far away right now, but do they truly understand that future college admission staff, employers, colleagues could conceivably see anything that they post right now? And I don't think a lot of our kids really, as I talk to kids, I don't think they really understand. And part of that deals with where they're at with their cognitive development. When they hit delete, if they've posted something and they've decided, gosh, maybe I shouldn't have done that. And I have kids in my office, and I deleted that. They really, often think that's gone. Nobody can ever access it again. And it's really important for them to understand that it's not gone and it can be accessed. So the next slide, please. Again, one last thing to consider is how well does your child do with limits to screen time that you may already have in place at home? For example, if they're constantly glued to the computer, you have to pry them away, or their game console, they'll probably have a difficult time putting down the phone as well. That just, kind of makes sense. So as we move on, the other thing is, when I look at, and I see within our building, and I also see the statistics put out by commonsensemedia.org of how many kids do have phones. Well, then part of me is like, well, then I'm not doing a good job in my role if we don't move on to talk about other options, or if parents decide, since we have so many kids with phones and access to social media, then how can we best help them once they're introduced, whenever a parent decides that it's the right time. This is something that I came across, and if anybody knows about this, I would love to have your feedback. But as I was preparing for the presentation, one strategy that, actually this is from Max Stossel, is to start kids off with a phone that can't be used. They get a phone, but it can't be used for social media, gaming, surfing the web. And it's called a Gab phone, and the logo is, I copy and pasted at the bottom right-hand side, Gab Wireless. And it's not a promotion. I've not talked to any parent who's used it, but it can be used for calling. It can be used for texting. It also has a camera, a calendar, access to an FM radio and a GPS, so it enables the parent to monitor where their child is, but there's no app store, there's no picture messages, there's no group texting. Is anybody familiar with this by any chance? So if it's helpful as a resource, I would love to hear if somebody looks into it and decides that that's something that they might want to consider, but I thought I would put it out there as a resource. So that's different than, a smartphone that allows access. Oh, Gizmo Watch. I've heard about the Gizmo Watch. I don't know a lot about that. So I would love to hear more when we get to the point where we have Q&A. So the next slide is, whenever you think your child is ready to handle a smartphone, whatever that may be. So I'm not here to say you must do this or you must do that, because as parents, we are just constantly making decisions based upon what we know, what we learn, and what we think works best for a child or children. Something that very much, though, I would suggest is whenever you think your child is ready to handle a smartphone, excuse me, it's really important that they understand that you are still in charge. I'm looking at the message. We've used the Relay, which is a screenless phone. It's like a walkie-talkie. Oh, interesting. It's great to share this information. So what does that mean by you being in charge? It means that you need to know their password. You need to establish clear rules and explain what will happen if the rules aren't followed, so that there's predictability, everybody's on the same page. It doesn't mean that your child will be happy about it, but it's very clear and you're providing structure. And we all know that kids and preteens and teenagers need structure. Having everyone on the same page will make giving your child a phone a little bit easier. As far as looking at the next slide, smartphones do now offer parental controls that enable you to set limits on screen time, as well as the apps, TV shows, movies, internet sites that you do allow your kids to access whenever that time may come. There are also tools that I came across, and some of you may already be aware of them, Bark and Screen Time, and it allows you to monitor and limit screen time on your child's phone, which didn't exist when when my kids were in high school. At least if it existed, I didn't know about it. So I would have really appreciated that. And again, I would love to know if any of you are using this for your children this age, or you may have children who are older. Next slide, please. So, TikTok is very, very popular with kids. It wreaks havoc. I think Eric, even though he's not been in our building that long, but he's learned a lot about this age group. And social media honestly does wreak havoc. The way it affects the mood, the way some kids come into school, their focus is often on what they've seen, what was posted, how many likes they're getting, did the person respond? But anyway, TikTok and other popular apps now do offer parental controls. So you can limit how much time kids can spend. You can control privacy settings. You can turn off comments and direct messaging, which, wow, would that be really, really, really helpful. There are kids who have their cell phones in their locker. Often I've been in so many conversations with sixth graders, and their mind is on, even though the phone's in their locker, their mind is really on, who has DM'd me. And I DM somebody else, did they get back to me? And it really does just take their focus away from learning. So there are apps that enable kids to create fun videos without sharing them with a broad audience, which I think is great. Again, I mentioned Bark, which I've not used because, I have grown children at this point, but parents can use that to monitor and limit kids' exposure, not only to social media apps, but YouTube, email, texting, TV, movies, all those things that can take up a lot of time. Next slide, please. So this is just when I learned about Bark and Screen Time. What I did is I just went to their websites and I literally copy and pasted their logo and what the service they offer. So Bark monitors a child's activity on social networks, YouTube, email, and text messages. I really like that it filters for sign of harmful content. I think this would be, I'm reading, I have used Custodio, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, parent controls. Oh, good, another good resource. And that's the thing, it's whenever we do give our children access to these platforms, we've really, my biggest recommendation is we really need to be involved. We can't expect them, I mean, we know the frontal lobe doesn't develop until, between 25 and 30 years old. So that's a long way off for these kids, and they really need our guidance. So it filters for signs of harmful content, including sexual material, threats of violence, depression, suicide ideation, bullying. Parents will get email and text alerts if there's something concerning in the child's online activity, which I think is terrific. It can also be used to limit screen time and to block individual websites. And the other resource, Screen Time, is a tool that allows you to set time limits on daily screen time, block out periods when they cannot be used, and includes categories of sites and individual websites. Next slide, please. I mentioned commonsensemedia.org. Again, this has been around a while. It's a wonderful, wonderful resource. It provides reviews and ratings for media, technology, and the goal is just provide information on their suitability and what's appropriate for children of different ages. It also, what I love about Common Sense Media is it funds research on the role of media in the lives of children. And they take a very active role in publicly advocating for child-friendly policies and laws regarding media. So I highly, highly recommend. And again, if you're wondering about a game that your child wants, if you're wondering about a movie, if you're wondering about, the resources are endless. The next slide. This is something that I also, before I end my slides, which is just in a minute or two, for kids who are struggling with any kind of mental health issues, could be anxiety, it could be depression, it could be, struggling with issues of self-esteem. We really do recommend that extra caution be implemented, because I think we all know as adults who use social media, who just use the internet, once you search something, what happens? You just keep getting more and more information on, whatever, it could be something, whatever harmless thing you might be, excuse me, you get back on your device and you've got, things that are popping up. So when you've got a preteen or a teen and they're looking into, anything related to anxiety, depression, sometimes it's self-harm behavior. Unfortunately, that happens quite a bit. Those algorithms are just going to tend to give them more content on that subject, on that topic. And, that may reflect their mood and just be, a self-fulfilling prophecy, perpetuating those negative feelings, because that similar content continues to be provided to them, whether they're looking for it or not. So to kind of summarize before I finish talking, we do have experts, parental groups recommending overall waiting until kids are at least in the 8th grade to let them have access to social media. Others will say, okay, that's true, but it also really depends on your child's level of maturation. everybody agrees. Oh, I'm glad to hear that. Lisa, Common Sense Media, often you find it very helpful. Yeah, I totally agree. Experts agree that when you do allow, so the one thing that I think I could emphasize more than anything as I finish up is when you do allow access to social media, it's really important to monitor what kids are posting, what they have access to, having your child's password as a condition of allowing them to access the app. And yes, I'm talking about down the road when they're 14, 15, and 16. And as much as they won't like that, I think it's really necessary. And also regularly discussing what they're posting, because the goal, because we're all using technology, whether it's, on our phones, our iPads, our Chromebooks, whatever device or devices we're using, we really want to help them learn the do's and don'ts of posting rather than just hoping they'll figure out what's appropriate and what's not. Some kids will, and others we're just sort of, leaving them out there to figure it out on their own, and sometimes suffering really negative consequences and often that they don't intend. It wasn't their intention until they're in the midst of, dealing with something that they had no idea was going to occur. So as the finale to my presentation, what we model sends very important messages as adults. How much time are we on our own devices? How much time are we spending engaging in eye contact? And that might sound really silly, but truly sitting down with no devices as a family, whatever your family looks like, and just taking time together away from screens of any kind, and truly being in the moment and being engaged without the distraction of a screen. And I think that's a challenge. I know it's a challenge for me. How much time are we encouraging our children to spend time with peers without any use of technology? Big proponent of keeping all screens out of bedrooms. And I know that, in the end, that's a family decision. And having really open and honest communication regarding, because kids need to know, at whether it's this age and into the teenage years, they really need to have an open and honest conversation, not just with their peers, because they're going to have it with their peers. They need to have it with adults regarding the benefits, because there's amazing benefits to technology. I mean, who would have thought in my pocket I could have a calculator, a flashlight, a camera, access to my email, all in, and that's amazing. A GPS. I mean, I love Google Maps. I don't know how I would live without Google Maps. So there's great benefits and certainly disadvantages of gaming, cell phones, and devices in general. And in the end, it's just striving for, like in many other ways in life, a healthy balance. And that's my presentation. I would love to hear feedback, questions, comments.
I'll start. That was really wonderful. Ms. Shapiro, thank you so much for that presentation.
Please call me Sherry, and you're welcome.
Thank you. I know even as a parent of two teenagers, what I really appreciate about that presentation was just how informative, but also open to the idea that each family is different and we might have different rules, but making the decision based off of information is always key. And I will say I appreciate that you added how we model technology use is important for our kids too. So thank you so much. I hope that people have questions. I'm just going to start off with one question that I have. I'm curious what the cell phone usage looks like at Woodbury. Is it disruptive? What are the rules and guidelines for students using cell phones in the school there?
Eric, do you want to start out? Or do you?
Sure.
Okay.
Brooke, you.
And if there's any like consequences for cell phones and what that looks like.
Yeah, I mean, so by and large, you all received it at the beginning of the year. I mean, our general, or I mean, I'll own it. My general hope is that families feel that their students can keep their technology at home. I also recognize that that's not like a formal policy, and we also know that there are families that want to ensure communication with their children. And so that's not a hard and fast rule, but we do ask students throughout the day if they do have technology here. And as Sherry's data mentioned, I mean, we see pretty much what they describe. Like much less of the 5th grade so far this year has clearly had cell phones. Much more of the 6th grade has, and I imagine as we move through the year, more and more of the 6th grade will. We do ask students when we see cell phones to put them away. Many kids leave them in their lockers, locked in their lockers. So it's not too much of an issue throughout the day. That creates disruption per se for individual students. I do think, as Sherry described, it creates mental capacity concerns for kids of what's happening on my phone that I'm not going to take out, and because the rule says don't take it out in class, so they generally don't. But it is not meant to be punitive. Our conversations with kids around their technology is not meant to be punitive for its existence. Where that has shifted some, and where like what we can and can't do as a school sometimes will come into play, is we very, very often hear about things that occur on social media, many of them on TikTok, which Sherry joked, but we see things stemming from TikTok all of the time. Common Sense Media puts that at age 16 plus is their recommendation app-wise. But many things come into the school from what has happened in the evening and over the weekends. We want to be actively engaged with families and students in helping solve those things, but that absolutely bleeds into the community and can create conflict between students. And so we found that, I will say, unsurprisingly, we see that far more here than I did while in the K-4 space. And I think our middle school counterparts see it even more than we do here at Woodbury, and then so on and so forth through the high school.
Anne Marie, I see you got your hand raised. Go ahead and unmute yourself if you'd like.
Hi there. I just wanted to let you know about the Gizmo watch. It's controlled by the parents or guardians, and the only people that have access to get in touch with your child are the people that you allow. So in our family, it's just my husband and I. He can't make a phone call to anyone else. No one else can call him. He can call 911 if he needs to. And we're able to track him. And he can't send text messages either. They're all like pre-created. There's no social media. So that's been working out very well for us. We'll probably continue with that version and option for us until he probably gets into the high school.
I love knowing about that. Thank you.
And it's pretty affordable too. It's through Verizon only. The watch is pretty cheap. And then I think we pay maybe about $15 or so a month for the service.
If I can jump in, I think one piece of this that's also very relevant for us here at school, especially with as technologically bound we became as a school and as a society over the course of the heart of the pandemic. There are regular conversations now in not just in Shaker or Woodbury, but sort of the ed space in general about what did we learn about technology and tools that really give kids access, or can level the playing field for some of our students, or provide instruction in a manner that's really productive. But equally so have we found things that don't work. and how do we find balance the same way we want to in each of our home lives and personal lives, but how do we find balance for kids in terms of when and when not to use technology in the classroom. The other piece of this that I think a lot of the things that I will take back home with me today related to Sherry's presentation is kids find avenues to use non-social media tools in a social media-like way, right? So we get a ton of benefit as a district, and our students first and foremost get a ton of benefit from access to the Google tools. It is also very easy, and kids find ways to use those tools to connect outside of school time, whether that be through emailing or through using a shared Google Slides presentation that they're both in at the same time and use sort of as an old school chat mechanism. You know, we see that all the time. And so recognizing that these conversations about safety online and amount of online activity are largely focused on social media, but they are things that even for students who don't have access directly to social media do have access in some ways. I think one thing that the district I know has shared in some communication over the years, but I think is worth bringing up here again is we utilize as it relates to those suite of Google tools or things that we use directly related to their student accounts in Shaker. We partner with a software called Gaggle, not to be confused with Google. And Gaggle is a software that's similar to some of the things that Sherry has mentioned, will flag activity, and has become a tool for us to be able to early intervene with families for students who may or may not be doing some writing or some researching, where we are able to get some early intervention to support students. And that's been incredibly useful, not just through the pandemic, but still very much today, as it relates to kids being able to get access to what they need, even when they find it challenging to ask for it.
That's awesome, Eric, thank you. I'm going to read this question from the chat. It is a great question. It's a little bit lengthy here. So switching topics to technology in the classroom. How do we minimize unnecessary screen time while still utilizing the newer tools? What is the impact of online textbooks, the computer-based new math curriculum, and adaptive learning programs? Are there still enough opportunities to do work with paper and pencil rather than slides and docs now that virtual learning is over? What lessons have we learned from the various tools we've utilized over the years, like Compass Learning, Dreambox, My Math, My Path, and most recently, Waggle?
This is clearly someone who's had a lot of experience in Shaker because they just named all of the tools of the last 7 years. So I have a little whiplash. No, I think just to piggyback on the previous comment, and I was having a conversation even last evening with a parent about a similar question. And I think we need to, like we all do in and out of work, right? I think we all need to figure that out. I tend to be pretty old school in my own approach. And so my pendulum has swung towards more paper pencil, right? And then I have some colleagues who've really pushed me to think about some of the accessibility tools that some of the technologies allowed for some of our students who paper pencil isn't the right tool. To speak on something, you know, we adopted a new math program this year and it has an online component called Waggle. We have teachers that are sort of using that in different capacities. Many of our teachers are using it in the classroom. Some of our teachers are trying that out as a home component. And I think that we've had families that have been on sort of both sides of that conversation of this is really working for our family or this isn't really working for our family. And I think long-term, what I would like to find some consistency in our curriculum over the course of a period of time now coming back from the pandemic, but then also to have that consistency to be able to give families options the same way we would want to give kids options of how their children can engage in the curriculum, right? So for our families that Waggle as a home tool is a really productive thing. We want that to be maintained, but for families that would like access to paper pencil options as it relates to similar work, or we would have those options available. I think with the adoption of the new curriculum at any point, that's challenging, but I think particularly right now, sort of coming back to consistent, excuse me, that's the beginning of sixth period. But the my feeling is over course of time, if we're able to maintain some consistency, we will find, you know, avenues for families to access what works best for their students and their families. And what would be our ultimate goal is that students are making some of those choices of, hey, I might love to do this on the computer, but I'm actually going to engage with this better on paper, or vice versa, and having both of those available for kids.
Thank you. We have another question in the chat. This parent is grateful that the school is discouraging students for bringing their phones to school. So thank you. The question is, how can we as parents support kids who don't have phones so that they don't feel left out? And is there any sentiment or movement among parents to agree as a group to, quote, wait till 8?
I love that. I love that comment / question. As in regard to supporting, I mean, I definitely hear from kids, and Eric, you probably do too. I don't have a phone. My parents won't let me until I'm 13. And there are, again, I think, you know, we make lots of decisions as parents in terms of, you know, how far are we going to let our kids go when they're on their bikes? How far, you know, there's so many decisions, and they're going to be different than the decisions of other parents. So I think that listening and, you know, reflecting their feelings, I hear that this can be hard. I, you know, not just saying, oh, you're not the only one. And of course, they're not the only one. There are plenty of kids who don't have phones. But really, I think this is where I would promote having that conversation that, you know, you're not going to change your mind, but having a conversation about why it is that we're waiting until 8th, you know. And I think it would be awesome if we had a wait until 8th movement in Shaker. But to, you know, for parents to just come together and agree that there's real benefit to that. So those are my thoughts. I just think that as far as kids feeling left out, supporting them, hearing them, and also having them understand that it's a huge responsibility. You know, when kids learn to drive a car, parents have different decisions to make regarding who they're going to allow to be in the car when their child is driving. Who are they? Are they not going to allow anybody else to be in the car? Or is it just going to be one other passenger? You know, there are so many decisions, and those just become, as our kids, you know, leave pre-teen years and go into the teen years, there's more and more of those decisions. And we are not always going to be popular when we, you know, make those decisions. But again, I think our kids benefit from the structure, the predictability, and the open communication about, you know, I remember my own son saying, why don't you trust me? And I needed to talk to them about, you know, it's not just about me trusting you. So I think that communication and talking so that they understand as best as they can at this age and beyond, you've made a decision, why you made this decision, and that you're also really want to, you know, have an open line of communication. I hope that's helpful. Eric, would you add anything?
Yeah, if I can also add, like, and I utilize this with my child's principal at Fernway, if you need to, blame it on me. Like if you need, because I know I've had families say that even just the conversation of this stays at home during these times, or I'm more than happy to be, sometimes as a parent, I find that the same thing can be said by my child's teacher that we would say, but there's just the closeness and the reality of being a parent that can make that more challenging. And so that is always, you've got my carte blanche.
Can I just blame everything on you then?
Sure.
Principal Foreman says eat your broccoli.
That's all right. Go to bed.
Yeah. I just want to add, as a parent of an older student, something that was helpful for my family was my daughter's good friend. Their parents also said no social media until high school. So I think the teenage girls were able to complain about their parents together. So that was helpful, I think, the solidarity for them. Jen, I saw that you had your hand raised for a quick second. Did you have a question or? Oh, you were clapping. Okay, great. It looks like we do have another question in the chat then. A comment to point out that there is a difference between using devices to access social media and play video games and using them to connect with their friends. The pandemic emphasized how isolation hurts kids, and even outside of a pandemic, not everyone has access to devices or to arrange play dates for their kids. Sites that encourage connections can be great. Thank you for that comment. Does anybody?
No, I just was gonna 100%. And I think for a lot of our kids, as school gets larger, some of the ways in which they're used to interacting are different in a larger school, and being able to navigate that through technology lens can be really beneficial.
And that's where we get into the wonderful things about technology, and when it's used appropriately, what a great resource it is. It's that balance.
I have another question. Sherry, you're so informative. Are you a resource to parents? Can people reach out to you, or do you mostly spend time with children? What is it that you do during the day?
I'm in charge of all the evaluations that occur here at Woodbury, and that pertains to the umbrella of special education. So I do spend a great deal of my time working with students, working with families, teachers, looking at concerns that people have regarding any academic concerns, social, emotional, and problem solving. So I'm very happy to be a resource to any parent who'd like to call and just have a conversation about their child and about this topic or other topics. That, I mean, we ask a lot of kids. We ask a lot, and I think that I mean, the best part of my job is when I get to spend time with kids, and I really enjoy adults as well. But we learn so much from children, and they need advocates. So I'd be happy to speak with anybody. You can call the main office and I'm the only school psychologist. So if you forget my name, you can just ask for the school psychologist. And my email is like everybody else's, Shapiro_C@shaker.org. But I'm happy to speak to anybody.
Great. We do have another question in the chat. Are there presentations to the students about social media and waiting and or managing, depending on if they have it? Just the thought that it can be helpful to have these discussions as parents, but curious how these topics are addressed with the kids at school.
Yes, so twofold. One, we do through our advisory program, especially at the beginnings of each year when students are either given a new Chromebook in 5th grade or sort of a continuation of having that Chromebook in 6th grade. We did recently have a couple of situations that arised around, another student's online information or Google information or Google Drive suite is similar to their locker, and that we wouldn't, access something that did not belong to us in the tangible real world. We also are not accessing those items in the technological world. So we added some lessons. We have each building in the district has what's called an I team. And that I team works with our technology department on tools that we have, but additionally, like some of the day-to-day fixing of things, but also some of the education that goes into the technology that we have. It's a little bit, I think we can find ourselves chasing our tail a little bit. And so I would like to start to feel like we know enough that we're creating proactive measures consistently. The world of technology is changing readily enough where by the time I've caught up with one thing, there are 6 or 7 other things that young people and adults are accessing, and I'm not as sharp as I once was, but I'm doing my best. But the goal ultimately is to talk to kids about it, and for that conversation to be matched with the decisions that families make at home, and letting our kids see the connection between conversations that we're having in the school building and conversations that they're having with their friends and conversations that they're having at home.
Awesome. That sounds good. Are there any other questions that people have or topics? This was a great hour spent. Thank you so much. A lot to reflect on, especially as we go into the holiday season, whether parents should purchase that phone or not. So thank you so much. Any last words?
No, just thank you to everybody, and please, don't hesitate to reach out as needed.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a great weekend, everybody.
You too.